welcome to the 𝓵𝗺𝗏 podcast, weekly powered by 𝓵𝗺𝗁 Chartered Accountants and Budget Ties Auto Centre. And it's becoming a tired cliche on this podcast, but I'll say it again, hopefully for the last time. The life of a Hull Kingston Rovers supporter is never a dull one. Since last week's defeat against Wakefield, Rovers have defeated the Wigan Warriors, lost 2 players to suspension, signed a new player, lost several players to injury, held the club's end of seasons awards evening, and became the first side in Super League history to name a 16-man squad. And of course, this is all before the final game of the season this Saturday at our cross-city rivals at the home of Hull City. Good evening, gentlemen. We've got a bumper panel for you on this week's podcast. We've got James, Craig, Keith, and Mike. Thanks for joining us. James, I think every time you come on this podcast, I pretty much say the same thing. It's never dull, is it? And, you know, when you go back a week today, was at Wakefield, you know, hopes of a victory, etc., etc. And then fast forward to where we are now. Another incredible week.
No, I didn't catch you then, Chris. Sorry.
No, just saying what an incredible week in the life of a Hull Kingston Rovers supporter once again.
Oh God, yes, it's never, like I say, it's never dull, is it? And I mean, I've been around a number of years, and it just, yeah, it's the same thing. But to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way. Really, keeps us entertained.
Definitely. And good evening, Michael Morton. Thanks for tuning in on YouTube. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, please send in any comments or any opinions that you have. We'll read them out and we'll discuss them. Keith, have you ever known an injury crisis like this before at Rovers or in rugby league in general?
Never. And it looks like not just Rovers, every club has had these injury problems. There's something definitely wrong with the game. I've said it before. We're too far apart. It's a car crash every tackle. It's the same ligaments that players used to have, and I'm not going to say it years ago, but the bodies are still the same. They might, even the fitter, the stronger, the more muscular, the quicker. But it's a car crash, as I say, every tackle, and that's what's doing it. Most of the injuries you hear about are ligament injuries, ACLs, and all. I mean, ligament troubles and muscles and soft tissue injuries. You know, there aren't many broken arms or broken legs or broken necks. So I've never seen it like it. And I don't know the answer, funny enough.
No, well, it's a strange one. I mean, Rovers, I think Danny Maguire said today, I think he's at 29 players across the first team and reserves and academy, and you know, it's an absolutely crazy situation. And whether it's just bad luck, whether there is actually something in it, you know, it'll be a difficult one to get to the bottom of. But Craig, we'll kick off with Wakefield last week. A game that Wakefield needed to win, really, to secure Super League status. They, of course, did that. But going into that game, I know Rovers were suffering from injuries and we had a number of patched up players and players out missing. It was maybe a game that we had a bit of hope and a bit of expectation that Rovers might come away with a victory.
Yeah, I didn't actually get to the game because I had some family commitments, but I've seen it back. But prior to the game, I was thinking, I know we've not won many games before that, but there was more of a togetherness and they were showing some good signs. So I went into that game thinking we could actually get the 2 points here. Obviously, with what happened was quite disappointing in the end. I think I actually felt, personally for me, I was a bit flat after the game. Because there was that hope there that we'd turn up and do Wakefield over. So to come out of it, score 1 try and lose, you know, was it 18-6 in the end? It was quite disappointing.
Yeah, and it was a game that at times did feel a bit like a pre-season friendly. I mean, the setup at Wakefield now, of course, have knocked down the main stand. They're replacing that. Just the whole atmosphere, it was a bit of a strange occasion, really, especially from a Rovers point of view. And of course, Mike, we saw Mikey Lewis line up at fullback, much to the surprise of many Rovers supporters. I think Danny Maguire said that he wanted all his best players out on the pitch, which is understandable. You know, we're a team that needs to be able to create things. But unfortunately, injuries put paid to that plan, and I think it did look a little bit clunky at first with Mikey at fullback, but we never really got to it pan out, did we? Because yet again we suffered another injury.
Yeah, it has literally been quite the story of definitely the final third of our season when it comes down to these injuries. I know we've kind of picked up here and there across the season, but this final third has been absolutely excruciating in terms of the caliber of injury and the length of time that it's keeping players off the field. Obviously, we think of players like Jordan Abdul, who hasn't played probably since sort of May time, which, you know, when you're looking at a rugby league season, he's missed half the year, hasn't he? So it's, not good.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, James, you know, the supporters were hoping, expecting maybe a victory, and you definitely got that sense from Danny Maguire and the players as well. And, you know, over the course of 80 minutes, I know there was, a bit of adversity, Jimmy Canos, yellow card, injuries, a couple of maybe debatable tries. But Rovers in that game against Wakefield just never really got going, did they?
No, I think the overall game was a bit of a damp squib, really. I think, you know, the first sort of 20-25 minutes or so was just a real arm wrestle, and it just seems to be going between the 25-yard lines, and nothing really seemed to be happening. Just cancelled each other out. I thought Rovers seemed to get more into it towards the end of that first half, and I thought, yeah, okay, we've done okay to go in 6-0 in the lead. But say the second half, it just sort of just petered out, and I just think it just probably caught up with everything. Everything just seemed to catch up in that second half.
I don't know what you thought, but for me, at times it felt like a pre-season friendly. It just seemed
it did
intensity.
It did, and it just I think because Wakefield, I think, you know, more or less secure anyway. You know, I think, you know, taking a massive points difference for them to drop behind, to lose. So yeah, it wasn't. I think, as you said, the stadium with them knocking down the main stand. I know it doesn't it's probably one of the crappiest grounds in the game anyway. It just felt like it was playing on East Park. There was just no atmosphere at all, really.
Well, the only problem is, James, the toilets are better at East Park. So
I was going to say, yeah.
There was just two crap teams, weren't there?
Yeah.
Wakefield had more. We're not on say to lose, but Wakefield played as if they wanted it more than Rovers did. It was just a crap game. We've never done well at Wakefield over the years, even when we had good sides. They've always managed to turn the odd winning game. I think one season there was once we played them 4 times. I think we'd beat them 3 times out of 4. And I can't remember what year it was. I remember going, and one year they just played us off the park in the last one. You know what I mean? So, and yet we went 2 seasons ago, and we hammered them. They're just a funny team at the minute. Wakefield, they've lost a lot of games by a few points. You know, not a few 6 points or 5 points. They might have been well higher up the season because on paper they're not a bad side. I mean, they're 2 good halfbacks. That Miller and Leo, is it, or whatever? Lino. I mean, they're good halfbacks. They're leaving, aren't they? Miller's going to Cass. I've heard he's going to Wigan, so I've heard.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly going to be decimated by players leaving. Obviously, 2 of them are coming to Rovers next season.
Yeah.
Goober, Mark Groundhill, thanks for tuning in. He's put PLT should have started at fullback, bad decision. I suppose, Mike, we can appreciate why Danny Maguire wanted all his best players out on the pitch at the same time, but maybe was it a time for putting round pegs in round holes?
Yeah, probably. We've seen Lewis at fullback at York, and I know that was over a year ago now, but the experiment, shall we say, was told to have not paid off, and that wasn't going to be his long-term position. And I think he's probably our halfback that we look for running the line and actually attacking that line with the ball in hand. And you can do that from fullback, but we lose that from half when you take him away from that. We've seen PLT now a couple of times, and I feel like he's a real little live wire, and he's very lively. And I think definitely we should be seeing him more playing fullback.
Yeah, and it's definitely a feature of Rovers players, isn't it, to make that fullback, take away almost a defensive responsibility and create another attacker in the line. And you can understand why Danny Maguire did that. Probably top performer on the night was Frankie Holton, 46 tackles, 7 marker tackles, 15 carries, 95 metres. Probably the best of a bad bunch. We saw 𝗵𝗵𝗄𝐿 score a 2 kick, probably one of the best kicks I'd seen for a long time from a prop. So for me, that was the ultimate piss take and probably just highlighted what a bad night it was in the end for the Robins. Lewis Murphy's try, Craig. I know you weren't there at the game, but obviously you've seen the replays. Any thoughts on whether that was a try? And we seem to be awarding tries on effort now, don't we? Rather than whether they've actually gone over the whitewash or whether they actually are tries or not.
Yeah, as a Rovers fan, it's a no all day long.
As a Wakefield fan,
I've only seen a couple of angles. As a Wakefield fan, obviously they're going to say, yeah, but nah, you can't see from that. Man. Terrible. But no, I personally thought it the whitewash on the side. But you know, it's like you just said. You know, it's kind of when the camera's out there, that's a problem. You know, I think 9 times out of 10, unless it's Rovers, going to give a try.
Yeah, definitely the benefit of the doubt. And one big talking point as well, James, was the tackle by 𝗁𝗏𝗏, which has resulted in him receiving a 2-game ban. The club have appealed that. Unfortunately, it's not been rescinded. So, of course, that Wakefield game was his last of the season. He won't be featuring the derby on Saturday. I know you've been very vocal in your criticism of that tackle, especially in light of the tackle we saw against Wigan on Monday. I think the biggest frustration is that lack of consistency, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think when we saw it out of the ground as it happened live, it looked a perfectly legal tackle. It's a strong, dominant tackle from Litton, dumped him Murphy on his back, and I thought it was interesting that the referee wasn't even going to blow up for it. He was still in a defensive line. It was almost like they were going to have to play the ball and carry on. And it's only when Murphy stayed down that the referee decided, I better have a look at this. Spoke to the touch judge. Murphy was getting treatment, and then next thing it's on report, and they get a penalty. And then Murphy hops up like there's nothing happened to him. So yeah, I think once it happened, I think once we knew it had gone on report, I think we knew Litton would get a ban. I thought maybe 1 game, but to get 2 for that, was just outrageous, really.
Yeah, Richard Silverwood, of course, former Super League referee, he's weighed into the debate. He's seen a clip of the 𝗁𝗏𝗏 tackle. In his opinion, he thinks the ban was obviously awarded and not rescinded is because the torso and the head were in the wrong position. So the torso and the head are slightly past horizontal when the tackle's made, which means that heading to the ground, it's his head first, with a potential for injury, whereas compared to the Wigan tackle that we saw on Monday, the torso was flat upon landing on the ground. So it's these finite margins, isn't it? It's these you go a couple of degrees the wrong way and all of a sudden a great tackle becomes a bad tackle. And what we would say is that tackle that 𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏 did make on Murphy, it's not the first time he's made that type of tackle. He's almost made a feature out of it because he is a smaller lad. He's almost got to change his technique to be able to tackle some of the bigger boys on the pitch.
The game's gone crazy. They're killing the game. The people you talk to that have followed rugby for years and years and years, and I'm one of them. I'm just sick to death of it. You go.
Funny though, Keith, because when I look at the attendances in grounds and they've been pretty consistent. We're not seeing thousands of people sort of being turned away from the game. And, I know there's a lot of noise, within the stands and on social media about, But I think when you look at the game's still a fantastic product.
Shit. I mean, you I don't know. It's beyond me. You've said early on, it's not the same game.
If you could change one thing, Keith, what would you change?
Go back to 5 yards.
5 yards?
Yeah, what it used to be when I played. But
How do you think Rovers would cope with that now, Keith, if it went back to 5 yards?
It's like everything else. You have to get used to it. They've got used to not having hookers, haven't they? I mean, now the scrums are fast. You might as well have them. But it wouldn't be rugby league if you didn't have scrums. So they've just literally killed the game. And you say people are still signing up. Yeah, the majority of Rovers do because they're season pass holders. And so it'll be interesting next year. I mean, I see they've frozen the passes again, so that's one good thing. But it'll be interesting to see. And I've only talked to half a dozen people that I know. And I think 50% of them said they're not bothering because they're just not enjoying it. And we talk about now, we're sat here talking, and we've just said the referees and inconsistent they are. We're not talking about how great so-and-so was, but what a great try they scored. Or you go in the bar after the game and everybody's moaning about the referee. Even when they've won, they're still complaining because they're just not consistent. And then it goes to this disciplinary panel, which is another farce. They just seem to make it up as they go along. I mean, and Cullen was one of the dirtiest players that ever played. He's the chairman. You know, they're frightened to death of people with these head knocks, and the rugby union players are suing the rugby union not being looked after and all this sort of stuff. Well, I don't know. It's beyond me. It's beyond me.
Yeah, well, as well as it being a disappointing outcome from the match review panel, obviously, Mikey, the result was a disappointment, but we did get some good news. 𝓲𝓱𝓮 obviously played against the Robins on Thursday night, put in quite a decent performance at those forward. It was finally confirmed over the weekend that he'd be signing for the Robins and that'd be here in 2023. Excited by that?
Excited would be a strong word, but most definitely looking forward to watch him develop, because I feel like it's nice to see us looking at other clubs that are in that same and similar position as what we are and taking away some of their better players with the likes of 𝓵𝓱𝓏, and also looking at some of the prospects as well, as you say, with 𝐼𝐸N coming over. I feel like in the past we have often been looking at players that aren't necessarily playing a lot of first team rugby, and it's quite nice to look across the Super League now and see players like Lewis Senior having a really good pivotal part of the Huddersfield Giants towards this back end of the season. So it's really good to see that the players that we've got coming in are actually first team regulars, or people that are on that are actually playing good minutes ahead of joining the Robins.
Yeah, and Craig, I suppose it's maybe a fair criticism, isn't it? And a lot of it's down to where we've been in the league table for a number of years, but we've struggled to sign players at the peak of their careers or when they're playing the best rugby league. And we've definitely seen a shift in that maybe over the last couple of years where, you know, like Mike said quite rightly, we're signing players who are on form, who are doing all right, you know, at good ages as well. You know, you only have to read the old Daily Mail today about James Batchelor and how inspired he was by 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗏. And I think every new signing's, you know, excited about what's happening. But the players also were bringing something to the table, aren't they? And they're not necessarily just eking out one more contract. We seem to be getting some young, hungry players coming through.
No, and that's it. That's what, as fans, you want to be hearing the things like James Batchelor had said, but it's also getting bums on seats because they're up young and come in. Players, like I said, these are players coming over for 1-year deals. These can be exciting prospects. And it just kind of gets you like just buzzing. I know the season's not over, but it is from Saturday, but I'm already like kind of looking forward to next year and what 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏 can bring. I like listening to all the players and what they've said about 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏, our current crop of players, and the new signings for next year. It sounds all positive.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll park the Wakefield game there. And James, we you know, crazy situation. We go playing Thursday to then playing on the bank holiday Monday. You know, obviously the players didn't want it, the coaches didn't want it. I noticed a lot of the chairmen and owners of clubs have been very quiet about whether they wanted it or not, because you expect that they probably voted for it. You know, probably good excuse, get people into the ground on a bank holiday Monday, you know, towards the end of the season. Anyway, what was your hopes going into the Wigan game? Because after that performance, and then obviously the subsequent ban to 𝐁𝗵𝗏𝓏 and Jimmy Kinehorst, you're already starting to fear the worst, aren't you? going into that game?
You just start to think, what sort of team we're going to be able to put out. And obviously at the time after the Wakey game, it was, we didn't know what type of team Wigan were going to be sending. It was the thought of the likes of Field and Smith and French sort of ripping into us. It was a bit fearful, really. So yeah, a bit of trepidation. Just again, just a team that's just playing on fumes, really. Then losing Kindhorse for a ban, losing obviously Jez. You're just thinking, well, that's going to be a nightmare situation again.
Yeah, and ultimately, Keith, despite it being a high-scoring game, it wasn't a game of high quality, was it?
I didn't know. I quite enjoyed it, to be honest with you. I did, yeah. I thought we played some good. The pleasing thing to me, the two things that pleased me was how well that Phoenix played. I didn't know where he was actually playing. I didn't know whether he was fullback, scrum half, or where he was playing. Okay, but I thought he had a blinder. He was my man of the match. But the other pleasing thing was when 𝗵𝗵𝗏 put Doughton over for a try. One forward passed to another forward and put him into a gap. That was hallelujah to me. That, you know what I mean? It was. I thought, Jesus, he can pass the ball, and I mean that what they call it. That you say about their players, there was some good players amongst them. Them young kids they had out. I read the other day after the game that one was 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿's son, the other one was the scrum half, who I thought was very good. He was quick. He was a good ball handler. He could see a gap. There was some good. I thought there were some good things about that game. I did, honestly. I enjoyed it. One of the better games, and Michael have a pop up in the ear. But I thought Tate had a real good game in the centre, and I haven't rated him, but I thought he played well. I did. And he is a centre. I was talking to Mike Smith before the game, and I asked his opinion, and he said, "Well, he's a centre. He's not out else," and he proved it against that Wigan team. I thought he did well, and I thought Phoenix. I thought was out. Well, he's out of this world. I thought. I mean,
Mike. If we keep on Will Tate, obviously he got through into the side, a number of weeks ago now, due to injury, etc. And he's definitely a player who seems to be benefiting from getting regular game time.
He does, absolutely, and you think, this kid made his debut 2 years ago, and he's probably not even played 15 or 20 games for the club yet. He's been so in and out because he's been a lot of injury cover. But you think back to 2021, where he came into that side at Warrington for the playoffs, and he came on late off the bench that day, and he did incredibly well in that level of that performance. And then this year, we've kind of seen him again sort of drip-fed into the side as and when we've needed it. But I completely agree with Keith. When he plays in that centre position, he does look a lot more comfortable than what he does when he's on the wing. And I feel like his meters out of backfield when he's returning that ball from kicks is very, very good. And I think learning off somebody like Ryan Hall will be brilliant for him when it comes to learning techniques of how to get those extra meters coming out the backfield.
Yeah, and I think one of the big differences as well now is that, I mean, for me now, with the injury situation, you look at Will Tate and you almost consider him just a bang straight on the team sheet, first team. And what's really impressed me is how he's filled out physically. He looks the part now. He looks like a centre. And this game time he's getting is helping his development, and he runs out of back play, absolutely fantastic. And he's got some great people around him, hasn't he, to learn off. No one better, I suppose, than Sean Kenny-Dowell. Mike, do you think Will Tate is the obvious replacement for Sean Kenny-Dowell? I think we've spoke about it before.
I think it's difficult to put that level of pressure on him because of the level that Sean Kenny-Dowell has been at while he's been at this club in the last few years. But there has to be a progression plan in place for when Sean does eventually retire. And I think Will's got to be somebody that puts his hand up and says, you know what, I want that number 4 shirt in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
Well, we've got another. Has anybody been watching the NRL with this? I can't pronounce his name. Yeah. I mean, he looks handy to me. He looks a really good centre. So we're gonna him and Kenny-Dowell in the centres next year. Senior on one wing and whoever on the other. But Senior, I mean, I must say about Senior, he'd been shopped around different clubs before we got him, and then they took him back. and they took him back, and he's playing in the position that his brother used to play in on the left wing, and he never got a lot of game time at Wakefield. At Huddersfield, and because you got McGilvray on one wing and his brother on the other, so he wasn't getting game time. Somebody who I was talking to said he can be as good as his brother if he gets the game time, and he's proven it now in the last few games he's played for Huddersfield. He's scoring tries. He's big. He's strong. He's quick. You couldn't ask for much more, I don't think. You know. So we should have a really good backline next year. I've watched this Kennedy playing for Brisbane. He looks handy as well. So, and the only thing that does worry me a bit is the kid who's coming from Newcastle Knights is getting on a bit, and you can't get in that Newcastle team. There's something wrong.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he has been playing for the last few games. He's managed to get his way into the loose forward position. 𝗵𝗵𝗁𝗁, he's looking very good at the moment. Of course, Parramatta Eels.
No, I'm talking about the Newcastle kid.
Yeah. And then, so it's going to be interesting in 2023. I mean, someone's thrown out a name for us. James Scruton, who's watching on Facebook, he's saying, keep saying it, get Chris Hankinson as Sean Kinney-Dowd's replacement. Relegated with Toulouse. I think he's their top point scorer. Absolutely lethal with the boot kicking. You know, I suppose there's a few more spots available, and if you look towards the end of next season, when Kenny Dow that'll be when he retires. There's going to be names bandied about, isn't there? And there's still a bit of room now, James, for us to bring signings in ahead of the new season, because we look still a little bit short in a couple of positions.
Yeah, and I think didn't sort of Maguire say a couple of weeks ago that intimate that there's some more signings coming in. That's before they announced the Iden signing. So yeah, I think this, if anything, what this season has shown is that you can never have enough players. So yeah, I think we do need a couple more, probably another prop, maybe another half as well.
I was going to say as well, James, nothing highlighted that more again against Wigan. 𝗵𝗵𝗏 and 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏 both going off early. Yeah. So as much as we talked about the Wigan lineup, I think they had 3 debutants starting the game, and I think they had 4 on the bench who'd never played Super League before. That soon levelled things up, I suppose, when you're losing 2 key players like that so early on in the game once again.
Yeah, I think Yeah, I think it was, and I said I think we need some more players in there. And I think, but going back to the Wakefield game, I think the fact that the way Miller and Lena basically ran the show, and we didn't have the real sort of regular halfbacks playing, just filling in. I think that sort of really probably at the end of the day cost us a bit of that, potentially cost us that game. So that's why I think you'll probably do need another halfback in just to come in.
It's interesting. I keep meaning to look at it, Mike. I want to look at every halfback partnership we've had this season, or every starting halfback partnership, because it'll probably tell a tale of some of our performance. I know it's not always easy to pinpoint it on simple things like that, but over the course of a season, you can see a pattern. And I'm pretty confident with Abdul, Rowan Milnes, and Michael Lewis next season. But like we've seen, I suppose what's at the back of people's minds now is injuries, and do we need to almost overcompensate in the fact that players might be injured, and we need to get more people in through the door because we don't want another season like we've just had.
Of course, I think you've got to look at your value for money signings ahead of that 2020 season when we brought the 5 or 6 Bradford lads in, and you think of the ones that we've still got going on strong now. Your Milnes, your Minchella, Staunton, Ryan. Those guys have come through from the Championship, and I think that's probably where we're going to be looking to do our recruitment now. Obviously, we're not going to be able to bring any more overseas players in. We know we're at quota, and I wouldn't suspect we'll be looking to the Super League that much. But now I think there'll be some gems to find in the Championship, and that's where the rest of our recruitment will lie.
Yeah, it's a bit quiet in that area, isn't it? About players who might be looking at, and normally you get to hear a few whispers, don't you, about potential players and stuff. Is anyone, Craig, in the Championship you've got your eye on, who you think might come in at Rovers and do a job next season?
To be honest, There's not a lot of names that scream out to me at the moment, but that's only because I've not really taken much interest in the Championship this year. Obviously, it's all about Liam Featherstone. But I'm sure there's some gems in there. Like, unfortunately, what happened to Garrett, I thought Garrett was, from what his 5 games I think that he played, he was getting better every single game. So I'm sure there's someone else out there who, and like Frankie Alton, will get better coming into a Super League environment. I know they mentioned about that winger from Barrow, but I think for me personally, that is one player I probably wouldn't go for, only because I don't think it fits the criteria of Willie Peters, because he wants him tall, athletic. I know he's quick, but there's more to a game than just scoring tries now for a winger. It's making the meters, getting quick to play the ball. I know one of the fans on Twitter had said that he's doing well in the Championship, but I think for me personally, Super League is completely different class. They'll be looking at someone obviously with size for me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens over the next few weeks. It's going to be interesting, I suppose, with the World Cup on our doorstep, whether there'll be a bit of a delay maybe to see what happens there, if there's any players who potentially come to the fore, or whether Rovers will want to get all the business done early. It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. If we go back to that Wigan game, though, Keith's already mentioned about how well young Phoenix, PLT, played. 16 carries, 135 metres, a 9-metre average gain, 6 dummy runs, 11 tackle breaks. And he played, started at fullback, he then went to hooker. He really showed us, I suppose, Keith, didn't he, what he's capable of doing. And maybe, it was a good sign for me in that he didn't look fazed by the fact he was having to change positions, and he looked like he wanted the ball as much as possible.
I think it was a bit like Litton does when he come on. He just brightened it up. He came on, and like I said earlier, I wasn't sure where he was playing, and I said to the kid next to me, I said, "Let's look at him." I said, "He's bossing people about. He's saying going over here, go there." You can see him talking to the players like a good halfback does, And I thought Moon played better when he came on. Moon started to play around, which he hasn't been doing enough for me. I mean, he's 6'2", or 3 maybe, and he can run. He's not a bad, but he just don't take him on enough. But against the Wigan, I thought he did. I thought to me, like I said earlier, I thought we did well. I know we was only playing against a load of kids, but you can only play against what's in front of you, can't you? And they had some good players as well. That Partington, he impressed me. Never got tackled with the ball once. Every time he went in, he unloaded it, or he put somebody through a gap. And as I said earlier, that halfback, I thought he was brilliant. That young kid. I read somewhere where he was. He's some of somebody. Well, and obviously he is, but somebody of note. But the Phoenix, I thought was very, very, very good. Really good. Yeah. I'm not saying he's going to be another Mikey Lewis, but he showed a lot of good points. I was talking to Mikey Lewis at the supporters club, and I said to him, "What would you rather play, 6 or 7?" I said, "Either. I'm not bothered." So I mean, if you put them two together, you got. I'm not saying 2 Roger Millwards, but the other know to take a line on.
Yeah.
If you've got right forwards that can unload the ball to them, and you've got the right game plan, so they call it. I think that it's promising. It really is.
Yeah, and Keith, you've got a fan, Carl Smith. He's commented. Good to see Keith back. He talks some sense.
Thank you, my son. What else did I tell you to say?
Yeah, you're not related, are you? I mean, going back to the Wigan game, Adam Wadford on Facebook, he's put, when I saw the Wigan lineup, the way the game ended, it felt like a defeat with 3 tries conceded in the last 10 minutes, and the scoreline as close as it ended. I suppose, James, it's always disappointing, isn't it? It does seem to be a bit of an Achilles heel for Rovers, the way we do concede points easily, but you know, I think Rovers, to the credit, it was a case of just digging in. They've done enough to get the result. And you know what? Through the adversity and what happened at Wakefield and through the injuries and all that, I was pretty proud of the lads for the way they stood up, the way they shone. You know, I know 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗍, I put some stats out about him. You know, he did a lot more minutes than he's done in a Rovers shirt. He looks like he showed up for the team, and it seems to be a real team effort. And I think to Danny Maguire's credit, that's what he's managed to foster since he's took over, that togetherness that seems to be maybe lacking a little bit under Tony Smith towards the end of his tenure.
Yeah, totally agree. I think, you know, overall in the Wigan game, I think once we saw the squad that they were sending out, you know, Rovers were really on a hard into nothing. But we conceded some tries towards the end. But by the same token, I think they probably in the mindset was thinking, well, the game's already won. We've got Hull FC on next Saturday. We might as well just save a bit of energy. And at the end of the day, you know, it didn't make any difference whether they're going to go up or down. You know, maybe meant we'd go to Hull in a different place to where we in the league table. But at the end of the day, the game was won. Might as well save some energy. Hopefully, not get any more injuries. But again, just totally agree with what Keith was saying about PLT. I thought, you know, he was actually outstanding. He was just everywhere. You know, and it's great to see. You know, he's really got a lot of confidence. And you know, overall, yeah, it was a good, you know, solid, bonded team performance. You know, like I said, I think we said a number of times before on here that they've got some grit in this squad. They've got some determination. And I think that sort of came through on Monday. You know, they did what was needed to be done, and they won.
Can I just say, we talked about the Wigan kids. I mean, the young lads that we had out there, they all look pretty good as well. Every one of them.
𝗁𝗏𝗁 was impressive, I thought, when he came on.
You know, all of them, I was quite impressed.
Yeah.
Say they've just come out of the academy. I mean, it comes back again that you've got to have a reserve grade, doesn't it? You've got to have a constant reserve grade where your kids can come through, serve their apprenticeship, and then go into the first team. But they came, every one of them. I mean, 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗁, I thought is a great prospect. He's just got to learn how to pass the ball. But I thought everyone that played, all them kids, I thought they did all right, without a shadow of a doubt.
And Craig, it was good to see 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗁 go over for his first try of his career. Obviously, with safeguarding, he wouldn't have been able to do the nudie run anyway, even if he hadn't scored. So, at least he'd probably dodged that anyway. But no, you know, he's played more minutes than he'll ever expected this season. He's come in, he hasn't took a backward step. He's loving being in and around the first team, and to cap off a good performance and a victory for the Robins with a try. You know, as a supporter, it's great to see a homegrown talent come onto the pitch and be able to do that. And obviously for him, he'll be absolutely buzzing now.
Oh, definitely. You know, I think the place erupted when he went over for his try. And, you know, it's well deserved. You know, he's 17-year-old. He's come in with not a lot of, obviously, he's no experience apart from reserve grade rugby. And he's put his best foot forward. And that's all you can ask for him. You know, he tries his best. He gets the ball, runs in hard. He's doing the basics right at the moment. And, what a great moment for him. You know, it's one he'll never forget. And hopefully, you know, it's the start of things to come. And it's come a bit of another level, you know, for this weekend to go out there and keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and, you know, we're talking about youngsters, Mike. Conor Moore, another one. I know he only made 5 carries, but he had an average gain of 9 metres, which is, you know, for a kid of his stature and young age, is really good to see. And obviously, we're going to see more of him on Saturday in the derby. But you know, the fact that these kids have been chucked in at the deep end, for want of a better phrase, it bodes well for us next season, doesn't it? Because them players now are going to be chomping at the bit to be in and around the first team. And it's probably fast-forwarded their development by being chucked in at the deep end.
Yeah, we've seen some players in the past get chucked in at that deep end. And you think of Matty Baharrell, 2014, Wigan at home on an Easter Monday. We got absolutely annihilated, and he never saw a professional game in the Super League again. And this feels very different, as you said there, with Conor Moore, Conor Barley, Zach Fishwick. It's great to see these lads coming through, and hopefully this is comments that we're going to make now that are going to age really well as we head into the 2023 season and beyond, because this baptism of fire may be something that actually benefits them further down the line. You know, we know what some of these so-called established players can do. We know what they offer, whereas we're still learning a lot about these young lads, and hopefully their development will be matured based on the fact that they're getting this experience now.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose, you know, we don't often praise opposition supporters, etc. But it's quite refreshing, wasn't it, to see a healthy travelling support. James coming over from Wigan and cheering on the boys for what, you know, effectively a dead rubber game. You know, there's nothing in it really for Wigan, but yet they travelled over to support their young team. And you know, it despite, you know, all the negativity, I suppose, surrounding it about the side Wigan might play and our injuries, etc., it did feel like a bit more of an occasion. You got me, James? Yeah.
Sorry. Those talking to Craig. It did. Yeah, I thought, you know, it was a good turnout from the Wigan fans, but I think they always do seem to travel in numbers anyway. And it's great to see a load of visiting fans at the stadium for home games, because, you know, let's be honest, some teams it's hard to bring anybody, but no, I think it created a good atmosphere, and, you know, fair dues to them. You know, they probably knew what sort of team they were going to be. Wigan were going to be putting out, so yeah, fair dues to them.
Yeah, definitely. So after the victory over Wigan, we'll look at the announcement the club made about the players who will be released at the end of the season. Of course, we already knew that 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗄, 𝓵𝗵𝗵𝗁𝓏, Corbin Sims would all be departing. It was confirmed that Will Maher and Ben Crooks will also be leaving the Robins. And then, of course, we saw a number of youngsters being released. Charlie Kavanagh, Adam Rusling, Nathan Cullen, Bailey Dawson, Tom Wilkinson, all players who have spent time out on loan with various sides this season. I've been told on very good authority that Rovers are running a reserve grade team next season. And based on them players being released, it starts to maybe make a little bit more sense that maybe a reserve grade competition won't be in place and Rovers will be running with an under-19 side next season instead. I suppose there's something to be said, isn't there, Craig, about having money tied up in players who might not necessarily feature for the first team. And we've seen, obviously, the emergence of a number of young players into the first team this season because of injury, etc. But was you surprised to see them young players depart, especially when they had been out on loan gaining first team experience?
Yeah, I was actually quite shocked, especially with the Adam Rusling one, because I'm sure it was only a couple of months back. Maguire was actually saying how much he was looking forward to working with him, and he's got a lot of potential there. So yeah, for the youngsters, I was quite surprised, especially with Charlie Kavanagh as well, because I think when he played at Wigan, I thought he did quite well. Obviously, barring the injury, but I thought, again, you know, keep hold of him. Let's see his potential grow. So yeah, there was a few ones that shocked me there.
Yeah, and Mike, I suppose it highlights as well maybe the lack of money that's in rugby league in general, that potentially these players, and it won't be just at our club, it'll be at others, where these young lads, you know, potentially could go get a part-time job or a full-time job, still work part-time and probably make more money doing it that way than they would by sitting at a Super League club on a contract where they won't be earning as much money.
Yeah, it's, at the end of the day, you've got to look out for these lads as well. You know, they make a commitment to the sport as well as sort of a commitment in their life. And you only have to look now at a lot of the professional players are actually studying alongside playing. I know Robbie Mulhern has just done I think it's a PhD while he's at Warrington. Obviously, Morgan Gannon at Leeds has just got his A-level results. And it's great to see that these players are actually preparing for life after rugby, because, as we know, it's not always necessarily in this sport about a longevity of a career. So these lads having to work alongside playing will almost give them a lifeline for when they do actually finish playing. But when you think about the reserve grade level, how many games this year have Rovers had called off for various different reasons at reserve level? There's been a few issues with club doctors. I know I've planned to go to at least 2 or 3 reserve games, and they've been called off. And I've never been to a reserve grade game because the ones I seem to plan to try and go to seem to get called off.
Yeah, and of course we saw the derby that was supposed to be played tomorrow, reserve grade derby, that was also being cancelled. Rovers have now suffered a 48-0 defeat because of that. Obviously, we've seen the situation with the first team, but maybe the cutting out the middleman almost by bridging the gap between the under-18s, which will go to under-19s, and the first team. One good thing about Rovers, Keith, is that I know with the academy lads that they are actually encouraged to get a trade whilst also playing for the academy. They're not solely, just on rugby league, because I think people like Jason Everton, etc., understand that only a few of these players will probably ever make the first team at Rovers, so they've got to be prepared for life after it. And it's credit to Rovers that they're looking at them not just as rugby league players, but they're looking after them as people as well.
I think it's the worst thing that could happen. There's 2 worst things happen to rugby league. One is it went full-time professional because there isn't enough money in the game to pay the players what they're getting or what the agents want, put it that way. The second one, to me, you've got to have a reserve grade. I don't care what they say. I'd do away with the academy, and I've said it time and time again. Let them stop with the youth. Let the youth. We've got about 5 teams now where there used to be 30 in the Inland District League. If you're going to put money anywhere, give money to these local clubs, because we're all saying about, it's great to see kids coming through, but the kids aren't playing the game because the clubs aren't there to play for. It's a product, if you want to call it a product, and they work on 1% that think that will come through to make the grade, and the rest are just disbanded, just wipe like a snotty. They're finished. Like the lads that have gone, they've been out on loan, think that the careers is going all right, and all of a sudden they just got rid of. They must be broken-hearted. There must be. You've got to have a reserve grade, and I don't care what they say. And even if they play, they're going to go part-time. Part-time professionals like we used to be, work 40 hours, train 3 nights a week, and play at a weekend, and not get half the money they're getting now. I mean, some of the money they're getting, it's ridiculous. I mean, they reckon Manu Mao and Reynolds was on 300,000 a year each. I mean,
no wonder Adam Pearce wants to renegotiate his rent at the MKM Stadium. Then, if he's shelling out that much for that load of rubbish. James, we'll go back to just 2 players who've been released: 𝗵𝗺 and Ben Crooks. 𝗵𝗺's certainly a player who seems to divide a lot of Rovers' opinion, and Ben Crooks obviously been a fantastic servant to Rovers, and we wish him well. For me, I think 𝗵𝗺 came in and he did the job that he's probably expected to do. And Ben Crooks, he's had some fantastic moments in the red and white of Hull Kingston Rovers. Have you gone, James?
Sorry, I lost you again. I mean, as I've said a number of times before, I'm quite a big fan of 𝗵𝗺. I think he did a job. We never spectacular, never the most spectacular, but didn't make many errors and just and did a job that was he's probably told to go and do. I think people probably compare him I think unfairly to Walmsley. See him as a similar size player and expect him to be as destructive as Walmsley is. But he's probably been told to play a different game. And that's the way he is. And with Crooks, I think he came all of a sudden into us about 4 years or so ago. I think he ever let us down. You got some great tries. Obviously, got the quickest try in Super League history, which he'll probably stand for a very long time. So wish him well. But going on the youngsters, I was quite surprised when I think particularly 𝓵𝓱𝓮 was let go. We've obviously spoken earlier about the need for another halfback. Perhaps he could have filled that gap. And he's also, he's already had that Super League experience as well when he was at Cass. So I was a bit surprised that he'd gone. But you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, do you? And whether there's other things at play.
Yeah, and the assumption is they've been released. Actually, these players might take ownership of their careers.
Because he's been down at Cornwall, hasn't he? And I think he's doing really well at Cornwall. Same with Cullen. They might say, actually, there's more opportunities for me at Cornwall than there is at Rovers.
Yeah, so of course we wish.
Good luck.
Of course we wish all the departing Robins all the best for the future. We'll move on to the end of season player awards, which were held at the DoubleTree Hilton in Hull last night. Fantastic occasion by all accounts. The winners on the evening were George Key, who received the Roger Millwood Player of the Season trophy. Ryan Hall was second, 𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗵 third. Sean Kenny-Dowell is the Players Player of the Season. 𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗵 was second again, and then Frankie Holton on his debut season finished third. 𝗁𝗏𝗏 is the Members Player of the Season. Zach Fishwick is the Young Player of the Season, and Abby 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is the Women's Player of the Season. Mike, you was there. Fantastic occasion by all accounts.
Yeah, it was a really, really, really good night. Obviously, it had gone external, I believe, possibly even for the first time ever. First time they've been able to have that award ceremony in person, obviously due to the COVID pandemic for the last couple of years. And yeah, it was a really, really good occasion. The attendance was great. There was 33 tables, I think, that was all full with sponsors and fans alike. And it was a really, really good night. Really well put together. Hosted by Neil Rudd, and they had the guys from Sky Sports, John Wells and Jenna Brooks there as well. Obviously, anybody that watched on Facebook Live would have been able to see that as well. It was a really, really good evening.
Yeah, and I suppose we've seen the recent developments, Mike, around Craven Park, Craven Street, the rebranding, buying the stadium. That generally feels like we've stepped up a level. That the club are really on a good direction of travel, and I suppose evenings like this are fantastic because it really shows you, how we are doing, and what's really impressed me though is that they still give the opportunity for fans to be part of these occasions, and for me, that bond between supporters and fans is pretty unique to Rovers, in my opinion. And things like last night definitely go a long way to keeping that bond strong.
Of course, yeah. And like there was plenty of messages throughout the evening from the various award winners and even the guys that was presenting the awards as well, complimenting how good the fan base is and how sort of loyal they are. John Wells spoke incredibly well about the atmosphere at Craven Park and saying how when he gets his Sky Sports schedule and he sees that he's travelling to Craven Park, he's excited about what he's in store for because he knows that the atmosphere is one of the best in the Super League. And it was really good to see as well President Mike Smith stand up, and he actually acknowledged a lot of the fans and also the volunteers as well. There's a lot of people who volunteer the time to support the club on a match day and during the week, and it was great to see those guys get a little bit of recognition in that sense too.
Definitely. And am I right in thinking did they announce that Willie Peters will be over here this month?
They did, yeah, they did. Willie's flying in the next couple of weeks was what Paul Lakin said during his interview and on that evening. I said there was quite a lot of little nuggets in there of information that will be obviously quite fruitful for us Robins to get our teeth sunk into. Yeah,
and I wonder if Willie's coming over just to save on his phone bill, because the amount of phone calls he must be making if he's talking to Danny Maguire nearly every day and every new signing, etc. But no, that bodes really well, doesn't it? Especially for pre-season. Keith, do you remember any Player of the Year dues that you went to? Because I bet they're a bit different to the ones that Mike went to last night.
I don't honestly think we ever had them.
Maybe you weren't invited, Keith.
No, well, I never won one. I've got one for the what they call it, disciplinary committee. That was an annual reunion. No, I honestly Can't remember we ever read them. Supporters club, the old Tin Hut used to do one, I think. But nah, I honestly, we never had them. It's just another way of making money, isn't it? You know.
Well, that's the cynical way of looking at it, Keith.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, at the end of the day, Lakins come in and he's a money man, and you've got to give him his due. The club are doing all right on the financial side. You're only going to look at Craven Street and they make money out of that. The skates and the shop's doing well. I don't know what the lottery's doing nowadays, but no, I'll give him his due. He's done all right on that side of it, and we're going up. You know, we're still in the Super League, right? And as you say, this week it's a non-entity. The only other thing is that these kids are coming in. These local lads are coming in to play in a derby, and when you're played in a derby and you've come like Fishwick is a West Hull kid, right, and he's playing against Hull, he'll be buzzing. If there's only one game that you want to win all season, or two games you want to win, is you want to beat Hull. You've got to beat them, right? And to make your debut and to come out there, I think we'll do all right. And they've got a few local kids in as well, but it means more. It means more to the local lads to win that game than it does to an Aussie or an outsider, because they just don't know what it means.
Well, we'll come on to that very shortly, Keith. But Craig, George King got the Roger Millward Player of the Season. Would have been your choice?
Yeah, I think you put the question out yesterday, and I said George King. Obviously there's a number of players, you know, that I thought stood up so well throughout the whole season. You know, you talk Ryan Hall, 𝐁𝗵𝗆, Sean Kenny-Dowell, you know, but players like that. But George King, for me, he was the one where he led the line from the front, and then when he was off, you kind of. We seemed a bit lost. It was like he took control of that, you know, that forward pack, and for him to be able to do that. And I think I heard him say last night that he's not the finished article. You know, full credit goes to him, and fully deserved. I think there was a game against Warrington away where he played. Was it practically nearly 80 minutes of the game? And you know, for a prop to do that, it takes some guts. And for me. Rightly, deserved it.
Yeah, I want to try and find out, Mike. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but when was the last time a prop got the Hull Kingston Rovers Player of the Year? I bet we'll have to go a long way back to find that one, because normally it is the try scorers, the playmakers. You know, it's them boys in it who normally gets that award. But fantastic recognition for George King. And of course, Sean Kenny-Dowell, the player's player. I mean, it probably makes sense, that one, doesn't it? Because he's definitely a leader who inspires the players around him.
Yeah, it does. When you think about one thing that I quite like about the player's player is that the winner is actually our club captain. And I feel like that you should almost to be the club captain, you have to be voted player's player, because you're clearly responsible for your attitude towards your peers. And Matt and Frankie both spoke really strongly about Kenny-Dowell in the way that they were quite happy in the sense of that they didn't win because Sean did. And those two probably voted for him to pick up that award, because you just think of his mannerisms and his attitude. And I think to the Wigan game last year where he went off and it was kind of like, oh, we might not see him for a couple of games, and quick injection, 15 minutes, and he's back on and we win the game. And you think it's that kind of leadership that it's not something you can teach somebody. It's a trait that you've just got built in you that you can just tap into as and when you need it. And fortunately enough for us, he does that a lot.
Yeah. He's a fantastic player, and Rovers do look a different side when Sean Kenny-Dowell's not in it. But obviously, you know, we're finding a way to play without him. 𝐁𝗵𝗆, James, great to see him get some recognition. Obviously, the members play of the season, so voted on by, you know, season pass holders, etc. Definitely come to the fore at the back end of the season.
He has, and I think, you know, one of the things that was when I was voting for for the player of the season, it was actually quite hard because I thought there was so many options that you could say say Lytton, Parcell, Kenny Dowell, King, Halton. They all, you think actually yes, they've all been great this season, but I think Lytton has certainly seems to have stepped on from. I mean, he had a great it was great 2021. This season, he just seems to have stepped on even to a different level. And I think the fact he's been called up for the England Knights, I think, is just really testimony to how he's progressed. And hopefully he'll have a good dig in those two games when they play in the next couple of weeks or so. And hopefully it's a stepping stone onto to full England honours, because he thoroughly deserves it. He's certainly one of the best young English hookers in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if you've seen the picture of him, you'll see he's got an absolute massive shiner. Looks like he's been like some albino or something. It's that big. But I suppose Keith, Jez Lytton, he doesn't take a backward step, does he? For someone who's maybe not the same size as some of the opponents he's taken on, but he like we've seen with his tackles, what he does and the way he plays, he's a real credit to himself, isn't he? And he's someone who the club could really build around going forward for the next few years.
I mean, he's come here, he's come to Rovers, and he's also learning off Parcell. We've got to give some credit to Parcell, because he's sat on the bench watching him play, thinking, well, yeah, I can do that, and you've got to play, you've got to learn off better players, right? That goes back to reserves again, but he's outstanding for me. I mean, that's two hookers that have come from Hull FC to Rovers and turned out to be really good players. Him and Hodgson, they both did the walk from West Hull, and he's a great player, I think. And we've just got to hang on to him. Just, when we thought Parcell was going, man, I think that was just agents talk to trying to get a bit more money. But personally, I thought, well, if he goes, we've got Lytton.
Yeah.
It's because sometimes Parcell's played, and he does it a lot. He starts running about like a chicken with no head, looking for blokes, and he's not going where he should be going. But at least when Lytton comes on, they seem to lift the game. I think he's a great player. He's another Flash. He's another Flash Flanagan for me.
Well, very high praise indeed. Another award from the night was 𝓲𝓮 got the try of the season for his effort against the Black and Whites in our home derby game. Fantastic moment for him. Ethan Ryan got tackle of the season for against Leeds away, when he went from one edge of the pitch right to the other and managed to tackle the Leeds player as he was just about to score the try and gets him into touch. So good recognition for them too. I think that Mike, that try by 𝓲𝓮, I think one of the highlights of the season for me. That not just because of who it was against, but just the euphoria that was around it at the time. That was everything that Craven Street was about. The feel good factor at Rovers at the time. That was peak Rovers for me then.
Yeah, definitely. That probably that game as a whole. Obviously, we had the ratings play the teams out before kick-off, an early kick-off. Obviously,
sun was shining.
It was beautiful weather, wasn't it? Beautiful weather. And I think the timing of that try in the game as well. Obviously, Coote had, just gone over after a good Sam Wood offload. Not long before that second try from Coote. And yeah, it's great. And yes, okay, Coote won try of the year, but for me, it's Ethan Ryan. Ethan Ryan makes that try. The way that he takes the ball, beats 2, beats 3, and then obviously takes the death tackle really with the offload. It gets absolutely cleaned out. And then obviously Coote goes half the length of the field with the amazing commentary that Rovers decided to use of Rob Chadwick rather than using the Sky Sports commentary for that one as well. Was absolutely brilliant. But just one note I do want to quickly make with regards to the awards last night. When you look down the list of the players who were up for selection, there was 11 awards available on the night, and there was 10 different winners across those 11 awards. There was only Matt Parcell that cropped up twice. And I think that is a testament to a lot of the top performers that we've had across the club this year.
Yeah, definitely. And it has been a real... Go on, Keith.
I'm just going to say that Ethan Ryan doesn't get enough praise for me. I think he's a really, really good player. I think he's brilliant. I mean, when he goes, he excites you. When he gets the ball, he comes off that wing and he sees that gap and he goes for it. You mean? I think he's going to be a great player, mate.
I think he's matured as a player. I think the opportunity he's been given, I think he's really took it, and it's going to be exciting to see that battle for that right wing spot next season, because there's a bit of competition there now, isn't there? I think 𝗵𝗁𝗃𝗍's obviously nailed on for the centre spot, but that right wing, you could, Senior, Ryan, you could even maybe throw Sam Wood into there, although I think now he's played his way more into the middle than out as a winger, so it's going to be exciting. Adam Wadforth, he's come back about the last prop. Mick Vella, didn't he win Player of the Season 2007? I've just checked, he got Players Player back then, so what's that, 15 years ago? Wow, time flies, isn't it? But that's the Player of the Year awards. Wow, we've got a game on Saturday as well, haven't we? Rovers have named a 16-man squad for that game, which doesn't leave them much room to manoeuvre in terms of not selecting anybody. It's the first time in Super League history that a team has done this. The 16-man squad is Ryan Hall, 𝗷𝗵𝗄𝗏, George King, Kane Lynette, Matty Staunton, Elliot Minchella, Jimmy Kinehorst, Roy Milnes, Ethan Ryan, Sam Wood, Frankie Holton, Will Tate, PLT, Connor Moore, Zach Fishwick, Connor Barley. James, I'll come to you first. If you look at that 13, you'd be quite happy with that, wouldn't you? I suppose the caveat to that is how many of them players are beat up, and then the 3 kids who are going to be replacing them are fresh out the academy, and we're already down in an interchange before we've even kicked a ball. So it's going to be an interesting day on Saturday, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. And I think it probably just sums up the whole season, doesn't it? From an injury perspective, that we are in this position. But then, like you say, you look at the squad and you're thinking, yeah, there are still some decent players in there. It's not like we've got a team that is completely full of young kids. We've got some kids in there, like I said, PLT, Fishwick, Connor Barley, Connor Moore, of all, they've actually sampled, Super League, and they've actually put their hands up and actually not looked out of place. You're thinking they've got that enthusiasm. Fishwick made his debut at Magic against Hull FC and just ripped into them. And as Keith said, the young lads, they'll want to go out there and bust a gut for the club, and why not? I think you asked yesterday about is anybody looking forward to the derby? I wasn't. After I've seen that team now, I'm thinking, yeah, let's go and stuff them. And I think it's helped by the sort of the meltdown that's happened across rugby league that we've named a 16-man squad. And I was just thinking, yeah, go out there, lads, and just show them and stick it up them.
They would only pick 17 anyway, wouldn't they?
Exactly, and that's what I mean. And as I said to someone today, we've been in position. There was one of the 3 games on the trot. I know at Toulouse we lost Matt Staunton within 2 minutes, so we're down to 16 fit players anyway. So it's not an unusual situation. Obviously, it just means that from Maguire's point of view, he hasn't got any wriggle room about who he's going to be able to pick. And touch wood, nothing happens in the warm up. So that's the only risk. You see,
run around the pitch a couple of times and go in.
Sorry, Keith.
Just go out, run around the pitch a couple of times, warm up, and get back in the dressing room.
Yeah, that's what you used to do, didn't I?
They complain about playing too many games, and you do more in the warm up than some of them do in the game.
Yeah, I mean, the training schedule this week. I don't know if anybody, but there must be, literally wrapped in cotton wool up until Saturday. Even the captain's run, must be limited because there's the risk of injury. I mean, I don't know what the scenario is, Mike. If we occurred another injury, and can you play with 13? Can you? Is there a rule? Because we talk about player welfare, and probably quite rightly, the RFL will say, well, it's your problem, it's your club. You manage the players, injuries, etc. But when we talk about player welfare, and you look at who our replacements are going to be on Saturday, in the event of injury, interchange, etc. We're playing players who probably shouldn't be playing because of injury. Frankie Holton missed a game against Wigan through injury. He's put his hand up to come back. It just seems for elite level competition to be a bit of a farcical situation that we're in. I mean, it's not down to Rovers that they're in this situation, but when we have the double-header bank holiday fixtures, we see the frustration on players being suspended. Like James said, I was a bit blasé going into this game. I'm now a bit more fired up for it because I'm like, let's stick two things up to everybody, especially our neighbours across the river.
Yeah, the double header is what it is. We had a problem before that. It hasn't helped our situation, but we was in a problem situation regardless of this double header. Obviously, we did lose a couple more on Monday. If we'd have had those guys and we'd have had an 18-man squad this week, you'd have maybe been slightly more confident. But as James alluded to a moment ago, we've played games with 16 men this year. We actually played, I think the first game against Toulouse, Ethan Ryan didn't actually get on the field. He just sat on the bench all day, Tony Smith's last game. I think it was, or was it? No, I think it might have been the first one, actually. So it wasn't the last game, it was the first one. Ethan Ryan just sat on the bench all game. So we have played with 16 men. We've lost players to injury. If you think of the Wigan game at the DW Stadium, we actually didn't bring George King on at the end of a game, and we just played with 12 because we didn't want to risk another injury. So that could even be an option. Who knows? We might just have 12 players on the pitch at some point at the weekend because there's no rule to say you can't do that.
No, I don't know if anyone's attempted to pick a starting lineup. It becomes a bit of a fruitless task because whatever you think they might line up, like come match day, so it's a completely different side almost. But who would be the three who start on the bench for you, James, on Saturday?
Probably Conor Moore, Conor Barley, and Fishwick.
Yeah, are we in agreement with that? Do you think, Craig, is that what you'd go for?
I'd start one of the youngsters with George King, and on the bench have 𝗏𝗏 with probably Fishwick or Barley. Moore, and then Barley on the bench as well.
Yeah, I suppose the big thing, especially 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏, you don't often see him do two games on a trot, do you? So if you're looking at potentially players who might pull up, you've got 𝗏𝗏, but it's going to be an incredible effort from the lads, and this is why I hope that the Rovers supporters do turn up in big numbers. I think the club announced there's only 50 tickets in the north stand left. I think they've got an allocation in the northeast corner that are up for sale now. So there's probably going to be a good, 4,000, between 3,500 and 4,000 robins in the ground. That lot. I think last year? What was the attendance? Was it under 13,000 or was it under 14,000? I can't remember. It's definitely one of the lowest for a long time. And I suppose going into this game, there's a bit of apathy. The Black and Whites, Dave, had the luxury of naming a 21-man squad. I can't be arsed to read theirs out because I can't really stand them, so I'm not going to bother because I genuinely think it is in Rovers' hands, regardless of the opposition.
You've got to start big. Put your best team at 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏. When you're playing them, you've got to start big. Go out there and knock shit out of them for the first quarter of an hour. You're not going to get sent off, and it don't matter if you do because the season's over. But just go out there and batter them for the first quarter of an hour. Keep their supporters quiet. Get them on a back foot, and you've got a chance. That's what I'd say. If I was Maguire, he don't know. He's never been involved in a local derby, Leeds and all that. There's only one local derby, that's Hull Rovers, and you've got to get into them early. I was playing in one, and Bill Drake was playing in that far ago, and he smacks one of our players from the scrum. He just cracked him, and Ted Bonner had just come to the club at the time, and he says to him, "What did he do that for?" And Bill looked at him and he said, "We've got to start sometime, haven't we?" And that was what the game's about, right? Frank Foster sent one through to McGlone. I was playing number 10, and Frank Foster cracked McGlone, flattened him, and Eric Broom said, "I love you," and that was it. They'd gone. They all looked at even those players looked at Eric Broom as if to say, "Don't poke the bear, you fool." You know what I mean? And you just got to get into them. It's the game that you've got to win. You can't. But and like you said, Fishwick, I'd have put him on. I'd start him. Right, he's a West Hull kid. All his family's black and white. He'll be itching to get into them. It reminds me of me. I started at 18. I was playing in the first team at 18, and playing at Boulevard as it was then, the 𝓳𝗵𝗁𝐿 stand. I used to stand in the 𝓳𝗵𝗁𝐿 stand when I was an old supporter, and if you can keep them quiet, I used to play against. And if I played in the 18, the first bloke I used to crack the first bloke I come near. The 𝓳𝗵𝗁𝐿 stand used to go berserk because you never got sent off early on, you know. But you've got to get into them. I know you can't do it. It's a modern game and all this rubbish. But nah, you've got to give them some early on.
Yeah, and
that's
my
hint.
I was going to say one of the exciting features of this game is, and I know both sides are suffering from injuries, is the fact that both sides are going to have a number of players who are homegrown, locally born, come through junior ranks, not necessarily playing with each other, but playing against each other. So, rivalries will be on the line on Saturday, and there's going to be a few interesting matchups across the whole pitch. I suppose, Mike, the question is how backs up against the wall, you know, adversity, etc., etc. What is your biggest hope for the game on Saturday, other than, of course, a victory?
Probably that Jake Connor implodes again. You look. I know you've not read the squad out, but I had a look earlier, and they've got their 1, 6, and 7, and that's where it worries me. I just feel they've got that creative edge, and we're just going to have to try and crowd him out the game and get him out the game. And if we can get him out the game, we're going to give ourselves half a chance.
Yeah. And I think, to the credit, Danny Houghton, what is he playing? He's something like 38th consecutive game at Derby or something like that. It's an incredible stat, but, of course, he's Danny Houghton.
It's our grand final, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say grand final, Keith. I'd say
it's the final game of the season, and it's a grand final. So it's a grand final, right? And to win grand finals, you've got to start off and get into them. You can't believe, honestly. The hairs on my back are standing up. I just wish I was 26 and not 76. Because I'd be loved to be sat here now thinking that I was playing against Hull on Saturday. Yeah. I really would.
And James, I don't know if you saw, Ryan Hall put a tweet out earlier, pretty much saying what's there to worry about? And I suppose it's that kind of attitude from some of the senior pros within the team, which hopefully we'll see us through on Saturday. Because, like we said, it's a 16-man squad, young players, but there's still senior pros out there who've been there, done it. It's not a total team of novices, and if we get a few lucky breaks, if things go our way, we know how quickly the crowd at that place can turn on them. So, there's a lot of ifs, buts and maybes, but if they put 100% effort in, and the competitive as a supporter, I suppose, in the situation we're in, it's all you can ask for.
Yeah, it is. And I think looking at it, I thought what Ryan Hall put out was great. I think that just says, come on, let's do it. But I think at the end of the day, there's no pressure on Rovers for me. They've named a 16-man squad. Them on the other side of the city have written us off already. They're taking the piss. The pressure's on them, because if they lose on Saturday, how embarrassing is it going to be? Can you imagine the number of bed sheets that boys are going to sell that are going to have watching out scrolled on it?
They won't be selling rope.
Saturday night.
They won't be selling rope on the road, put it that way.
The unfortunate thing is they'll have no game to. They haven't got a game after it, have they, to go display?
Oh, they'll hang out on Loughborough flyover.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a really interesting final game of the season. As ever, the Robins will be there in big numbers backing the boys, and it can turn into a really fantastic occasion. And win, lose or draw, Rover supporters, I'm sure, will be backing the boys on Saturday. Mike, before we sign off, you got an update on Hull KR shirts and what's coming out next, or what we can go view on your YouTube page, etc.?
Yeah, things are going really well. Numbers are doing quite good across the YouTube channel for Talking Shirts. The latest episode is the 2016 away shirt that was worn by Ian Thornley. And the next one will be out next Friday, and that's going to be Mikey Lewis's 2020 home shirt. So yeah, cool shirts there. Obviously, we're getting towards the end of the season now, so this is like my Christmas, because this is when the match one shirts become available, because the lads obviously don't need them anymore. So this is like my little Christmas. I've already had a nice little teaser off 𝓵𝓵 about some away shirts and stuff. So things like that are exciting. And then obviously we get into 2023 territory, and we get teases for home and alternate shirts for 2023. So yeah, really excited about what the future holds.
Yeah, Keith, and for people who don't know, you are on the Heritage Trust at the Robins. Have you got any updates, or can you let people know where they can get involved?
Well, as far as I know, we don't get to know much nowadays, to be honest. It was cancelled last night, obviously because of the award night. Whether we've got to have a committee meeting before next month, because I don't even know whether we're having one next month. You know, Mike. I'm
sure there'll be something that Alex will pop out, but the way that the trust's going for Heritage, there's a lot that's going on social media now. The Hull KR Foundation have got social media channels. There's a looking back session that me and Keith attend, which is a Zoom session every other Wednesday at 5 o'clock. So that's really good for looking back on various different heritage items. So, and obviously we've got the physical meeting at the end of September as well, which will be on the last Wednesday of the month at in the North Stand.
Did I mention that a lady gave us a medal that was won by his great grandfather, and she donated it to the club. They've had it framed, and it's going to go up in the chairman's lounge, I believe. Can't think of the bloke's name now, but he played in the second final, and it was one of the initial Boilermakers that started the club off Eswell Road, and he emigrated to America and then came back. He didn't play in the first final that they ever played in, but they played in the second final that they played in, and they won that final, and they got this solid silver medal. It's a beautiful medal, and she donated it to the club. They're going to get a photograph of her stood with a medal and the frame that it's in, and it's an unbelievable gesture that she's had it all these years. And she's a Rovers supporter. She goes every game with her son. She's red and white barmy, Ellen they call her. And I was when she contacted me and said, "Did we won it?" I thought, God, of course we won it, And it's I'll try and get a photograph of it to you. You can show it on one of your next get-togethers.
Excellent, Keith. No, I look forward to seeing that. And that brings us to the end of another jam-packed Red Robin Podcast Weekly, which is, of course, powered by 360 Chartered Accountant and Budget Ties Auto Centre. A huge thank you, as ever, to this week's fan panel. If you're going to the game on Saturday, then let's give our boys the full backing, as it's going to be one hell of a slog. And for one last time this season, it's time to rally round the Robins.